It is Monday morning, and I wanted to just make a quick announcement that we had another donation last night towards the second retreat ticket of $200. So thank you to whoever dropped that in there. I know we were talking to somebody yesterday who's also thinking about making a donation towards the second ticket. They were actually thinking about just donating a whole ticket, but we were like, you don't need to do that. And they were like, well, we want to help. And because they're wonderful, and we really appreciate the intention that they come to all of this with. The point is, exciting things are happening. Exciting things are happening because we're making them happen by being them. It's not that we're out there controlling things to be exciting. We're excited. We're excited, and so there is excitement in the air, and that's what tends to come off of us as a result. This is the reason that I'm so very excited about this new video gaming thing that we've been doing. For anybody who's wondering how that's going, by the way, last night we streamed a 3-player game of StarCraft with myself, Andrew, and Amanda on Twitch and Trovo and Kick.com and a bunch of other platforms. But we restreamed a whole game. It was like 45 minutes. It was a lot of fun. We are definitely working in the direction of doing a lot more like team events, sponsorship stuff, just marathons, stuff that's going to bring the community together in a new way, one that reflects play, which is where I was going with this. Just as excitement has its own energy, play has its own energy. Because when we're playing, we're really involved with what we're doing. Our heart's in it. We love it, especially if we're not beating ourselves up for playing. If we're not thinking that play has no purpose. If we're not thinking that we're, being a piece of shit just because we're having some fun. But play gives us a lot of energy, far more energy than anger or desire, right? If you really are playing, you really just want to keep playing because you're playing. And this is something we've been talking about on the podcast forever. And so, with that in mind, we're going to be playing, and that's going to be a whole new segment of Dualistic Unity, and I am stoked for it. But not only will we be playing StarCraft 2, because I know a few people out there are like, that game's kind of intense in terms of strategy and whatnot. It's not a lighthearted game unless you make it lighthearted, which we do. If you haven't seen us streaming, definitely check us out streaming. It's a lot of fun. We have some good laughs. But there are games out there that are fun. There are multiplayer games out there that are meant to make you laugh, are meant to be fun and not serious. And we will be bringing those in as well. There's going to be a number of different games on this journey, all of which are meant to be a different experience and something that you can take something else from. So if you have any game recommendations, I encourage you, go onto the community Discord, go into the gaming channel, and type them down. Let us know, because we'll keep them in mind later on.
Yes, any and all suggestions are very welcome. And dude, I've said it, but I never would have guessed that I would have seen so many lessons in video games. Like we didn't stream the first time we played StarCraft yesterday, but like I was almost it was such a strange spot because I was experiencing both like an overwhelm of just options and there not being a direction and like almost seeing so clearly how much of a craving I have for some for a direction, like someone tell like, and it's like so brutal because, and I know it's not like just me, but sometimes it feels like that in a lot of ways, that like, oh my god, have I ever just been like, no, I got this. Like I'm gonna figure this out. And it's like, yes, I have throughout my life, but even just playing that game and combined with a frustration for not being great at it, despite having played for the amount of times that for the amount of minutes that we had been playing. It's like 10 minutes in, I'd played the game for 10 minutes, like all that stuff came up in throughout an hour of playing. And I was like, this is it was honestly blowing my mind after I sat with it for a sec after and, like, played some of the campaign on my own. I was like, "Oh my god. I just got really frustrated thinking that I should be doing so much better," and also just wanting there to be some things with StarCraft especially, like, there isn't a set way at all. There's a ton of options for what to do, which guys to build. Are you going to build, your army? Are you going to build your defenses? It's like, you got to do all of it. And there's not a right way to do it. And as you just fucking relax a little bit, laugh a little bit, smile a little bit, like, it isn't you start to almost gain an appreciation for just like doing it, and you kind of find a flow to things, and you're checking, you're like, oh dang, got these needs more guys, don't have enough supply things, gotta build some supply things to inform the guys. And there's this playing out of it when you're fucking in it, when you're doing it. And it's not like this, oh, take a step back and look at the bigger picture. Like, absolutely do that from time to time. But sometimes it's just about being the process of finding it out, and what you are as you go. I can't tell you how much it's been hitting me. And I was recording or editing season 6, episode 18 with Jackie and Amanda and Paige Randall. Fucking incredible episode. So that'll be out very soon. It was just hitting me more and more how it's like I put so much pressure on myself to say the right thing throughout my life, or wonder whether I'm saying enough for the right thing. And it's been hitting me more and more how little it is about what you say, and it's so much about what you are, what you do, and that informs the speaking. Like, you don't, but if you're focused on the speaking, it's like focused on the fucking superficial thing, trying to figure that out with nothing behind it. But if it's not about the speaking at all, then the speaking is like kind of an afterthought. Like, and it's given me a lot of memories of being a kid and playing. It's like there's never a thought of like what was going to be said. It's like you're probably saying a bunch of random shit the whole time. So, yeah.
I know. It's a good insight. Isn't it funny how you can learn just valuable insights in the strangest places that you would have never expect to actually have those insights? But of course, because what is going into that strange place? You. And you're the source of your insight. But it really just comes down to recognizing that. It's funny because you start to recognize, again, I think this is part of the reason that I am the way I am in terms of my responses to people, because sometimes I will say things and I know that the response sounds jarring. I know the response doesn't sound kind, despite being honest, but it's true. And so you posted a clip this morning from one of the episodes in season 1. Um, and I was talking about, God, what was I talking about? That we're all one, and that you have to be responsible for your response. Here and now, this is what you have. This is what you have. We're all one, but what you have is your response here and now. And that is very true. And somebody responded, well, it's a great message, but this could be taken as a reason to be, selfish and not show empathy to others. And I wrote back, because in the video it says numerous times where the awareness of the universe, we're all one, blah blah blah. Like there's a shit ton of caveat, is what I'm saying. But this person is basically saying, but don't forget, you got to save people, and that's kind of the point. And so I wrote back, I'm like, it's only going to be taken that way by somebody who's still committed to their ego so they can self-soothe, because they want to save people. Well, don't forget about the suffering of others. Am I encountering it right now? No, I'm not encountering that suffering in this moment, right here and now. And so the best thing I can do to help with the suffering that does exist is not suffer. And then when I do encounter suffering, be there with my response here and now. But we have this idea that the suffering that we project into the world is something that we can deal with, something that we can do something about, other than just learn from it. Oh, there's lots of suffering in the world, right? But you're not in the world. You're here. What can you do about this? And if you're like, well, what about the suffering in the world? Who is benefiting from that thought pattern? Who is benefiting from that train of thought? You are. It's all about you and where you sit in relation to the suffering in the rest of the world. It's all about you wanting to feel like a savior. It's all about you. and the world that you're projecting. Does that mean suffering doesn't exist? No. But the suffering that you're thinking about isn't what exists. The suffering you encounter is what exists. The suffering that you feel in yourself is what exists. And that's what your responsibility is, how you respond to that. But most of the time, we get so caught up in this idea of ourselves wanting to be good people that we want to see a world that needs our saving.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and that is absolutely where so much of my content has come from, is that not wanting to look, wanting to use the idea that I'm helping someone else to feel better about my own suffering, and not wanting to look at that and just, like, avoid that and use that as a means of feeling better, just to feel better, to feel like you're doing something. Oh, you say the right words, you get this message across in the right way, and it's it's interesting to even saying, go back. It's like, go back to what? It's like I've been doing that on varying degrees most of this whole time. And early on you mentioned uh there was someone you were chatting with who's been on an episode recently, mentioned that I seem a lot more relaxed in a lot of ways. And there was a point in the podcast where I was, really trying to find the right words. And it was just all about the words, entirely about the words, entirely about the conversation. And I think I get that how things can be sort of contorted into thinking that's it. The words, what it's all about. Just find the right words, say the right words, because it's not about you. If you're saying, like, who are you speaking to? Who are you speaking for? Where are you speaking from? What is it that's speaking? Is it someone who's actually taking it in, or is it someone who's thinking that they're some sort of vehicle for the message to get out there and feel better about themselves just because of that, just because there's a message getting out there instead of actually taking it in and using that it's such like a, oh god, it's such like a superficial process of thinking that saying something is doing it. But then and it's like social media was such the kind of perfect place in a lot of ways to be able to do something like that. Like it's not really hasn't been as possible to do that, to kind of create a sort of it's kind of like VR in a sense because there's a little more sense of control in that. Like even more recently, I don't clip up my videos that I post anymore. I'll just talk and express it. And but like early on, because I would clip up any space at all, and it was all about like piecing together this message. Like I had these frag fragrance, fragments of thoughts. There were some smelly thoughts. There were some decent smelling thoughts sometimes, but fragments of thoughts that I would piece together to like create this video or message that was like that was the whole point, was getting that out there, and then how it did meaning something about me, and it was like this sort of hollowed out thing, and I'm realizing more and more how much, and like, sometimes I discount that, like, there were things happening there because it seems, and it's not like I wasn't changing as I went and shifting and, growing and letting go of stuff, but it was so much about the words. It wasn't at all about what I was. It was just what I could express and get out there. And yeah, sometimes I wonder like what I even took in. And it's not to say that I haven't relaxed more. Of course I have. Even to get to this point. Again, there I fucking go. Because it's like to get to this sort of point of processing all of this, it's like I had to go through all that stuff.
Yeah. And you're going to keep doing it. And what's funny is that, a year from now, you'll look back at where you are now and you'll judge that. And it's always going to be there. You're always going to have the ability to do that. And what's funny is that it becomes delightfully paradoxical and kind of circular because you're trying to relax. You can't try to relax, right? Like the progress that you've made has not been made through you trying to make progress. The progress you've made is in you accepting that you don't need to. It's so very half-assed backward and kind of counterintuitive because again, you can't try to relax. So being yourself is not an effort. It's almost a cessation of effort. The effort is the control that keeps you in the box. The effort is the considerations for how you're going to be impacting others and how that's going to come back to you. That's all an effort. All of that extra thought, that shit's exhausting. And that's all trying to make progress. So the point of this is don't. It's not that you're not going to make progress, quote unquote progress. And by progress, I mean, it's not that you're not going to continue to move forward and there are ripples and ripples and ripples and ripples based on other ripples that you continue to make as you move forward. And you could call that progress, but progress immediately gives us the idea of a progress bar, right? Like as soon as we're thinking about progress, we think about 0 to 100%. There's no 100%. There's no done. There's no finish line. So the word progress doesn't really apply. But we tend to get caught up in that. It's like, oh, no, I'm moving forward towards something better. It's like, no, this is it. This is life. This is existence here and now in the process of doing something, in the experience of before to after. That's what life is. That's why we call it dualistic unity. It's all one thing that you get to experience as division. You get to experience moments in sequence instead of everything all at once, all the time. It's the whole point. So it's just going through it. That's what you are, your existence. So if you're existence and you're always going to be existence, then what are you trying to become? What are you trying to be other than the unfolding process of existence all the time? Because that's what you are. But it's relaxing into that. It really is. It's very much like the difference between going out, meeting a bunch of friends, and worrying about what you got to do afterwards. So you're always watching your clock. You're always looking at the time. You're never really involved with the conversations to the same degree that you would be if you didn't have to leave in a very short period of time because you don't want to get too committed. You don't want to actually sink into it because then you might lose track of time and you're going to lose control of what you need to do later. And that's very important to you and all that other fun stuff. But if you don't go into that group like that, if you go into the group and you just sit down, you're like, well, fuck it. I don't actually need to be at any particular place at any time. I'm just going to sit down. Your attitude changes, your tone changes, your energy changes. All of a sudden, you're actually listening to the people around you. Your relaxation level increases because now you're not stressed and trying to get somewhere. You're actually where you are, which makes you more sensitive to what you're hearing. It also makes it easier for you to respond in a way that's more authentic because you're not so worried about ending that conversation in a way that's pleasant and leaves you with a positive perspective of yourself because you got to leave real soon. So you're just more organically and intrinsically connected to everything that's happening simply by virtue of you not needing to be anywhere. This is true with everything. You will notice that it's in when we're rushing that we get the most frustrated, that things seem the most chaotic, right? It's because it's always based in some need. We got to get there. The pace picks up and everything turns to shit. And we know that because we felt that. We feel that when it's happening. And so the obvious answer is just get rid of the reason that you're rushing, or rather get rid of the reason it means so much to you and causes so much stress, which is what it means about you. That is not something that you have to try to do. That's just something you have to recognize you've been doing. You've been making it about you. That's it. And that's the effort that you didn't even know you were putting in. Isn't that funny? It's kind of like a nervous tick, or rather something that you just do habitually all the time. You don't even recognize you're doing it, right? That's what we do with identity. We make everything about us. We don't even recognize we're doing it. We don't even recognize that there's an option. We just keep doing it. Oh, this happens means something about me. Oh, this happens means something about me. Oh, I relaxed. That means something about me. Right? Like it's all we do. It's just a nervous habit. But we've done it for so long that we're not even looking at it. So it's the recognition that it's not an effort to relax. It's realizing where you're putting in the effort and letting it go.
Yeah. Mm.
Don't make that an effort. Because like anything else, it's just something that happens in the moment, right?
Yeah.
Like it's only something, it's just like responsibility. Like you can't be responsible for the world. You can't be responsible for all of the tension you're ever going to deal with in your life or have ever dealt with before. You can only deal with the tension you're creating for yourself right now. Only to the best of your ability too, because now you can turn that around and actually make it a source of stress to make yourself less stressed. Oh God, I'm still stressed. That sounds stressful, as opposed to, oh, I'm a bit stressed. Just the recognition without judgment, and all of a sudden you can feel your body relax. You can feel the breath leave your body, because it's a recognition without needing to seek a solution. It's a recognition without there being a judgment against it. So it's just a recognition. And in that, you sit in it and it changes.
Because it doesn't mean anything about you. And oh God, dude, the meaning something about you. And like, I'm not even thinking about myself right now necessarily when I'm saying like it meaning something about you, but there is coming up that like, oh, you're gonna talk about, and it's like this fucking virus, like a viral sort of thing. It's the like the devil on your shoulder sort of feeling of like just the assumption that things must mean something about you. Like what would and oh God. It's almost, and again, it's like making it into some sort of thing. It's like it's moment to moment. Right now, I don't have to you don't have to make it heavy. I don't have to make it heavy at all because it's not. It's not until it means something about me until the whole, and it's like so the process of letting go of what something means about you, of what reality means about you, about what the situation means about you, isn't something that's a process. It's something that has a sort of pull in a direction, possibly, but you can do it right now. It's not like you can prepare to do it right now, figure out the right way to do it right now. It's like, oh, there's got to be a way to do it. And then at the same time, it's in the moment, not making it about you, but that's your life, not making it about you. And there's yeah, it's like I want to say there's a lot to that, but at the same time, there isn't at all.
Yes, you do want to say that. Yes, we do want to say that. Yes, we do. Because that keeps us in the journey. That keeps us in the trajectory. It keeps us in the story. That makes us feel like we have somewhere to get. That's all. And that's the counterintuitive part of it. You really want to make progress in this. Let go of even the idea of progress. And what you'll find is that the pressure just comes off. But it's the pressure that you're trying to get through, and you're creating it.
Yeah, with each and every step, like even on, on in any situation, I can make it about something. Like there's got to be some sort of right way playing the video game yesterday. Like It's got to be a right way. Oh God, give me a hit of the right way. There must be a right way. There's got to be a correct way, like something to fucking follow, something to guide, something to look to.
I got to tell you, one of my favorite parts of the game last night was after the game, because you'll notice at the end of it, I'm like, I'm going to check out the score, and immediately I could feel the resistance of, oh fuck, there's a score, and it's just because normally what people do is they look at the score as a way to judge themselves. Who got the highest score? Who got the lowest score? Right? But that's not the way that works in the game, right? Because what you're looking at isn't just a score. You're looking at how many units were built, how many buildings were built, how many units were destroyed. So you're not looking at a score so much as just kind of a tally of who focused on what the most. And so you can learn from it in terms of strategy. See, like, for example, after the game yesterday, I looked at the numbers and I went, I'm really not training a lot of troops. Which is fine because it works for me as a strategy, but it's also the reason that I will create the barest number of workers, just enough to make sure the money's always there, to make sure I've always got enough crystals to create, but I almost never have a surplus, which ends up being a problem for me later on if I do get attacked, because then I can't just start pumping out soldiers, right? So there's something for me to learn. But if I were to look at it like, oh, I had a lower mining rate than Andrew, then all of a sudden I'm like, oh God, I got to get that up. Maybe I don't. Maybe I don't need to do that if it's something that works with the way I play the rest of the game. Because there's no right way to play the game. And that's the point. You can judge yourself for anything, but you're judging it based on the assumption that there's only one way to play the game.
And that it means something about you. Because what I realized was I skewed towards not taking in all the factors of what happened, not thinking about it, from a strategical thing, something I can learn from, but just like, how'd I do? And it's like, oh, every time it happens, like I almost want to throw up, but then that's me fucking making it about me again. And it's like, stop that. You don't have to do that. And so it can be funny. And if you can laugh, then it's like that'll at least alleviate the fucking weight right now, the weight that you're creating that isn't even that heavy. You're just doing it to feel like you're doing something, to feel like you're making progress, all to feel better about yourself so you can measure yourself relative to how you've been doing, like all me, all fucking you. And because afterwards, and that goes for anything, like looking at the score after a game, like, or in any situation, just this assumption of like, what does it mean about me? Like, how did I do? How am I doing right now? If that's your sole focus, say, for this situation after the game, then you're not going to see all the ways that you could take in. You're not going to take everything in. It's going to be very much like a glazed over, like, oh, did I win or did I lose? That's going to allow me to feel a certain way. And if I feel bad about losing, it's going to be the driving factor in order for me to win next time around. Instead of just taking in the considerations, not really thinking about whether you won or lost, because, you feel good about winning, you're also not taking in all those considerations. Meanwhile, someone who's like not as concerned about that is factoring in all of these things. And they're not just playing the game. They're just playing the game, but they're doing it for the sake. And so they're actually taking so much more in. But as long as it continues to mean something about me as I go, I'm not going to take as much in. And then the thought of like, oh, how am I doing? How is this going? It's like, you're not paying attention. You're not paying attention, so you're not taking as much in, and so as that become and, like, don't turn that into a measurement device. Like, how much am I paying attention right now, and what does that mean about me? Because it's just not about that. It's just not about you. It's just not, and that's when you're actually living too, like the virus of it meaning something about you. And it's just a, habitual. And again, it's not just how you think, it's what you are, it's how you live, it's what you do. And it's all of it. It's all of it. And
It just strangles everything. It just strangles everything. It's funny. We haven't talked about this recently, but the Dualistic Unity Life Troubleshooter, Eon, is amazing. A lot of people in the community have been using it. One person the other said it's the best $20 a month I spend because it's Chat GPT plus. So it's not $20 a month for the life troubleshooter, but $20 a month for Chat GPT plus, which gives you access to the life troubleshooter and just a ton of other really cool GPTs. Anyway, this thing's amazing. And the reason I wanted to bring this up is because I figured I would ask what it had to say about this idea of maybe taking video gaming a little bit too seriously, taking it a little bit too personally. And so I've asked it for its input, and I figured we'd just chime in. I'm looking forward to the day that we can actually make Eon talk. That'll be great. It's natural to get caught up in the competitive spirit of video games, striving for improvement and often measuring self worth by in game achievements. However, taking your performance too seriously can detract from the enjoyment and lead to unnecessary stress. Here are some insights and suggestions based on the understanding of the Dualistic Unity podcast, aiming to help you navigate this challenge. Recognize the nature of games. Video games are designed as forms of entertainment and expression. Like all forms of play, they're an opportunity to explore, to create, to engage without the weight of real world consequences. Reflecting on this can help shift your perspective from a need to achieve to a desire to simply experience and enjoy. Embrace uncertainty and the learning process. Much of the stress from taking performance seriously comes from a false sense of control and certainty about the outcomes. Accepting that uncertainty is a fundamental part of gaming and life can help you appreciate the experience more fully, whether you win or lose. Awareness of self beyond performance. Your value is not contingent on your in game achievements. Recognizing that your identity extends far beyond any virtual performance can alleviate the pressure you put on yourself. This awareness can foster a more relaxed and enjoyable gaming experience. Practice presence in your play. Engage in games with full presence, focusing on the moment to moment experience rather than the end result. This practice can enhance your enjoyment and even improve your performance by reducing anxiety and promoting a state of flow. Connect with the community. Engage with the gaming community, not just as competitors, but as fellow enthusiasts sharing a common interest. This can help shift the focus from individual performance to the shared experiences of learning and fun. Limitless potential beyond games. Remember that your potential as an individual is vast and unbounded. Video games are just one of many arenas in which you can explore and express yourself. Embracing a broader view of your capabilities and interests can reduce the significance you place on your gaming performance. And the illusion of control. Recognize that the need to excel and control outcomes in games reinforces the illusion of control in your life. By letting go of this need, you can embrace a more fluid and accepting approach to gaming and life experiences, acknowledging that much is beyond your direct control. Now, if you find yourself struggling to detach from taking your gaming performance too seriously, it might also be beneficial to just take a step back and reassess why you play in the first place. Is it for enjoyment, connection, or escape? Aligning your gaming with your broader intentions can help ensure it remains a source of pleasure rather than of stress. That Dualistic Unity life troubleshooter's dope.
Yeah, it is. And I think, oh man, like just anything like video games, something that can be taken very, very, very seriously and mean a lot about you, or it can be a practice in not doing that, in letting go of, you know, even there being a right way and like just letting yourself play, like just letting yourself find out, letting yourself figure out what the best way to do it is. And like just being involved in the steps to it, like in some like doing something new and not immediately trying to figure it out and do it the right way and do it the best way. And just like it's been I feel like it's been a long time since I've learned something new or like tried something new and like jumped in for the first time and like let myself be a beginner even and like not great at something. Like, oh my god, and how I could have easily spent so much of my life doing that because with being like feeling like you're comfortable, being in a state of comfort, like if that is the priority, jumping into new things doesn't make any sense. It's like, why would I'm gonna lose the feeling of comfort. Like, it doesn't make sense, which is insane because the just trying new things, it's like so much you learn so much about yourself. There's so much beauty in it, but it's something that can, oh my, just be entirely avoided with no even second thought of there being of you doing something ridiculous in not trying anything new for your whole life, and to think that that's what life is about is just maintaining a state of comfort, of being comfortable, feeling good about yourself. Because you start trying new things, it's like, oh, if you think you're, really good at stuff, really good at, living life, it's like, jump into some new stuff, do some things that you're not very good at, and there's going to be things that arise. You're going to notice all the ways that you judge yourself, get frustrated, and then work through and even realize how you do that in other ways. Like, I think that's helped me with even just being on the podcast, like trying new things has shown me, like, oh, that can be sort of playful. Oh, that's not really that different than what we do getting on here, but I'll put pressure on myself to do this for, like, I don't even know why anymore. I'm like, why the fuck? Like, something to do, something to think that, like, even fucking anything I say matters. And it's not to say that it doesn't. It's like it does and it doesn't sort of thing. But like, there's the side that it doesn't. It's like, it's more about what I am. It's more about what you are as you go. And having something to fucking speak from instead of just this sort of hollowed out thing that you think you, I don't know, figured something out, and then you're trying to express it, and that's why you have such a tough time because it's like rooted in jack shit.
This is it. And this is why, and again, beware the need to go out and do new things so you can learn stuff about yourself, because that becomes an addiction too. In that case, you're thinking about yourself in a certain way, and that's don't do that. That's really going to mix you up, because then you're like, shit, what do I do when I'm not going out there trying to learn something about myself? I'm gonna have to learn about myself. And that's kind of the point, is just to look at what is it you'd prefer, and then don't always go towards that. Try something else. So try something that's outside your comfort zone from time to time, because why not? But this is why, and I've said it before, and I've laughed with people about this. This is why I'm kind of goofy. Like, some people don't know that because they've never hung out with me, and they'll hear me talk on here, and I sound, occasionally I sound like I know what the fuck I'm talking about. But when you actually meet me, I'm pretty goofy. And it's just because I try not to take myself too seriously. I laugh at myself. Like, I laugh at myself all the time over stupid shit. Like, the funniest thing, if I jump 2 stairs down onto the landing, I like congratulate myself because it's fun for me. Like, I just do weird, stupid shit because my life is mine. See, my life is mine. And I don't wait for others to make me laugh. I don't need a television or a radio or a connection to the internet to make me laugh. I make me laugh. I make me laugh because I don't take myself so seriously that I can't laugh. And that's why I don't mind doing stupid shit. Like, I think the Virginia Beach retreat was great. We were playing shuffleboard there at one point. I finally got over to the shuffleboard table, and we were playing. I think Hannah was playing beside me, and I was having a great time. But at no point did it ever dawn on me whether I was doing well or badly. Like, at no point did I start to think to myself, "Oh shit, they're really doing better than me, or worse, or I didn't even notice. I still don't know, frankly." And it's just because I was having a fucking riot. I was having a great time. We were all laughing. We were having fun. None of it mattered. The performance was, in fact, the least important part of that moment. Anyone's singular performance in that game was the least important part of that entire experience, because it was the experience of being there as yourself that really mattered. That was really transformative. Nobody gives a shit who won that game, or even if anybody did win that game, because I don't think we were keeping score. Right? But we all remember the conversation, or rather, we remember the vibe, remember the feeling, remember the lack of effort, the lack of conflict. That was the important part. That can't happen if we take ourselves and how important we are into it. That can't happen if we're measuring our value. That can't happen if we're trying to be more. That's how important it is to just let go, because that's when you actually see the connection that's there. But as long as you're trying to look for that connection, you're looking at it based on a fiction that is making you feel divided.
Yeah, it's like you're trying to connect something that's already connected, and you trying to connect it. It is assuming that it's not. But like, just the idea of fucking competition. Like, I was competitive, and for a while, I felt like I wasn't. Like, it stopped. I was like, why? Why do I really care? Like, even in college, like playing baseball, it was started to settle in a little bit more. And like, why did and I was just putting fuckloads of pressure on myself that was making it just not fun at all. It was like almost at all. Like, it depleted the fun out of that game almost almost entirely. And that said, if you do want to have a lot of fun, check out the QR code for the California mini retreat. I think we have 2 or 3 tickets left. We were able to give one of those away with that marathon live stream, and that was
And
fucking
we may be
awesome.
giving another one away very shortly. So if you're going to come to this retreat, jump on that ticket now.
For sure. For sure. Where it's not about getting anywhere, and even, like, playing games at the retreat, the thought of even winning, it's like, trying to win and then feel good, it's like everyone's kinda like, "Yeah, I gotta be careful of that because that's buying into the same fucking double-edged sword as, being afraid of not doing well," and they go hand in hand, like, they don't it's like, yeah, it's just something to do, nothing right or wrong, like, being competitive, whatever, but it doesn't do the thing that you think it's gonna do. It doesn't get you to the place that you think it's gonna get you. Doing well, quote unquote, "doing well" throughout life doesn't make you like, it gives you the feeling of being better in comparison. It's all in comparison. So, like, it doesn't actually do the thing because, like, you're always at odds with things. So even trying to do well, I'm like, "Holy fuck. Maybe I don't have to, like, try and do well because that's just an arbitrary thing too." But, it's like it still seems to be there, but if it's not there right now, it's again, it's like one of those things you can't let go of wanting to do well forever. You can only let go of wanting to do well right now. You can't let go of taking yourself seriously forever. You can only let go of taking yourself seriously right fucking now. And that's
There's the humor. That's it. Like, fucking doing it again.
straight up. And like, just the oh my god, and then as you'll start to realize you don't have to take yourself so seriously, like, again, it's you think you're gonna be like, "Oh, never take yourself seriously." It's like, no, you can just not take yourself seriously right now. You can laugh at yourself right now. You can laugh at how fucking wrapped up in shit you've gotten throughout your life right now. And even that's pretty funny, and how seriously you take things that aren't fucking serious at all. Like, it doesn't have to be, you don't have to be so serious to yourself. And then, like, there's even the thought of like, but how do I do that? Like, stop. Just fucking stop. Just stop.
No, I'm very serious about not being serious. It's funny because again, it's that thing. It's not something you can try to do. But a lot of our societies really we just don't know how to play. We don't know how to play and feel valuable. I think that's the point, right? Because we have this idea of value. I mean, this is why everybody's panicking. It's like, oh God, the robots, AI, it's gonna take our jobs. It's like, if we valued living more than we valued working and feeling like we're getting ahead and we're getting more than our brother or our sister or our neighbor, however you'd like to put it, Wouldn't be such a bad thing for all this work to get done by robots, would it? Yeah. Like we just it's the system. It's how we look at it. It's like they're taking our jobs. It's like, no, they're doing the jobs, which means you should have more time in the day. It's like, but nobody's going to pay me just to live. Well, now that's a different problem. Maybe we should talk about that problem instead of trying to hold on to the problems that we're used to.
Yeah, because then it gets into the conversation of like, you know, oh, yeah, that's too much. That's too much. We can't, not that much change can't happen. No, dude, you're looking at you can never actually do that in a lifetime. You can never actually do that. And just that continued kick the can down the road sort of mentality of it's going to be, oh, the world's going to end. Probably not going to be in my lifetime. It doesn't really matter what I do because, like, it's almost it's easier in a sense if you're wrapped up in yourself to just find a trajectory and try and stick to it. Regiment a plan and just stick to that and think, like, just assume that you're going somewhere, getting somewhere, becoming something, and just continuing to make those fucking paths. It was like there's a simplicity in it that I think there's a craving for that sort of simplicity, because then it's just it's following. It's following a thing, following a given mentality, following a given sort of underlying state of feeling like you're in control. Again, if I just do these things, if I just structure my day in this way, if I just accomplish these things, if I just set this sort of goal and do this, it's like it can feel good like that. Like I could easily just, start making running videos and run a marathon every month. Could do that. Like that would be easier for me than playing video games every day and like laughing at myself. And yet, like straight up, I'm not even saying like, oh, yeah, but that's no, straight up, like just doing that, running one marathon a month for the rest of my life. There's a side of that that's easier than me not like than just being myself, than just expressing myself and just feeling all those things, like, and how fascinating it is that that's something that would be lauded, doing that, making videos about that, surrounding that, and then sharing, like, that would be I'm not saying that during the process it wouldn't be tough, but, like, straight up, that would be more comfortable, certainly more comfortable than me being myself, which is like, yeah, without a shadow of a doubt. And yet at the same time, like, where is that getting me? It's like it would be running on a treadmill for my entire life, never actually living, just kind of using this cyclical sort of process to continue to feel better about myself and not address anything about where I'm still attached. And I'd be able to get brand deals, I'm sure, and make plenty of money and all that stuff from that. But like what good would it be doing to anything or anyone outside of myself?
Well, you'd be perpetuating the idea of control, which is definitely something that's going to make you popular. I ran across a creator the other day, and I couldn't help but leave a comment, of course. But this creator, in typical, I got control of my life fashion. Sitting there, he's got his top off. Obviously, he just went for a run. He's sitting there going, what do I say to people when they're like, hey, do you want a drink of this soda? Or hey, do you want a drink of this alcoholic beverage? Or do you want a smoke of this weed? Or would you like to try some of this junk food? I say no, because I take my body seriously, because I take my life seriously. And he's just going off about, you can judge me all you want, but at the end of the day, you know, I'm going to be the superior person. I'm going to be the person who gets the most out of my life. I'm going to be the person, blah, 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 blah. Right. I'm, you know, doing more than you. And I just left a comment. I'm like, oh, I bet you this guy gets pissed off when everybody doesn't recognize how much he's done. Right. Like all of a sudden, when somebody's like, so that would drive him nuts. And it's just because he has this idea of himself. I'm in control. I do all these things. I have discipline. I make sure I don't have these experiences because those are bad experiences. That makes me the right kind of person. You want to be like me. There's so much that goes with that shit. Like so much. But underneath it all is this fucking rampant insecurity. Right? That's just crushing him otherwise, because that's the reason he's complaining about all these people would be like, you know, do you want to try some of this? Like, no. You know, what do you mean I'm not having any fun? It's like, it's not just because you're not taking the thing, it's your response. You know, it's the reason that it's the idea that you can't take the thing, that the thing itself is somehow going to take away from your life. That is not a normal response. Like that comes from an addiction, that comes from desperation, that comes from need. Right. So if they're like, well, why don't you have any fun? It's not because you didn't take the soda. It's not because you didn't take the bag of chips. It's because you recoiled and then judged them for offering it to you. That's why they're assuming you're not having any fun, because you're not.
You're not. You're not having fun. Fuck, dude. Like, because that dude, that's me in a lot of ways. So many ways. Straight up. Like,
You are not that abrasive, straight up.
I know I wasn't, but like, you know, it's on degrees, but like, fuck, that just hit me different. Like, it wasn't fun. Like, there's a side that's like, it's fun. Like, I'm not gonna lie, when I, you know, ran the marathon last year, like, it was fun, but it was straight up an egotistical high, you know? Like, it was for sure. There was that side of it. It wasn't like enjoyment for the sake. It's like my feet are pounding the ground. That's the reality of like my experience right now. It's everything surrounding it. It's fucking
Taking my
everything.
shit out on my feet.
Yeah, fuck you, feet. You've only carried me for my entire fucking life. Now I'm gonna beat you down a little bit more, but I'm gonna get these big cushiony shoes, so it's like I'm super separated from the earth, so I feel better about all this. And just like, oh man, the amount that I see and like just that sort of like just like this. And I'm not saying I made videos like this. I was at least getting high when I ran most of the time, but and again, I'm not like completely shitting all over running, like going on a baked run, listening to some music and bouncing around. Like, again, everything can be taken very seriously or very lightly. I'm not saying like I still will go on runs. It's just not this sort of regimented thing. And like, you know, during the training and stuff, like I was tracking every run, like just to have a sense, even though I didn't want to necessarily do better or perform better. And it was a strange sort of thing of constantly like, even if I wanted to like stop and walk for a little bit, like I wouldn't, because I'm like, yeah, but then my average time will this and that and this and that and this and that. And like a component of this whole, I guess, processing of all this stuff was I stopped tracking the runs. And even just not doing that was like a step. And that's like where I'm at now, like the thought of tracking a run is like, oh my God, like I at least right now couldn't see myself doing that ever again. But like it was difficult at first. Like it was like this, but it's this internal difficulty. It's like, you know, when I got super into intermittent fasting and, you know, took again, it's like just so many patterns of taking things to extremes. And so I got into like intermittent fasting and then just took that to the extreme of like eating once a day. And then mixing in some like day on, day off things, but I wouldn't let myself, like this was before COVID. And yeah, like I would go into my office at work and like not let myself have a morsel of anything until after the workday ended. And it wasn't like it wasn't fun. It wasn't fun. Like all these fucking things, all these paths, all these ways of doing things. And I was saying before, along the lines of the running stuff, like people have this sort of like warrior mentality. That's what I was about to say when I said that at least I was like getting high, I guess. And again, it's like at least comparison, judgment. I'm not judging anyone who does anything necessarily. I'm just recognizing a lot of my own patterns in my life right now. And it's like, it's so healthy, so uncomfortable and healthy. And like life is more fun, and just realizing how little fun all those things fucking were. Like trying to be something, trying to get somewhere, trying to become more than what I am, because I don't assume that I'm enough. So I constantly have to be doing more, always have to be doing more, adding something, learning something new again. So I had something to fucking share, something to say, because it couldn't be just me living my life for me. So in a lot of ways, I now will put pressure on myself just to like be a relaxed person even, and like express relaxation. And it's like, bro, you haven't gotten many reps in the tank with that. Like, give yourself some space. Just like fucking relax. Just relax.
Yeah, don't stress about that. That's not happening. Yeah, absolutely. Well, this is why I always say, like, it's always the most counterintuitive thing. Like, how am I going to do the best at the retreat? Show up. Like, just show up. The rest will play out. But if you come to the retreat with all kinds of pressure on yourself to act a certain way, be a certain way, get a certain result, help people get to a certain end result, however you might have it in your mind, that's not organic at all. You're not actually listening to anyone. You're trying to get them to what you think is the best result for them. And they're telling you in each and every moment that they're talking to you, whether they realize it or not, what it is they're working through. And it's not up to you to determine where that end result goes, because you can't see that cascade. You can't see how many dominoes are falling, right? And so it's just show up. And that's the same with everything. It's the same with okay, so perfect example, because I know people would be like, well, preparation has some purpose. And you're right. Absolutely. Preparation has some purpose to a point. There's a point that preparation stops actually being effective and only becomes a placebo. See, there's a certain amount of preparation that's going to help you know what it is you're doing. And then there's a certain amount of preparation that's just meant to make you feel like you know what you're doing. And that's part of the problem. It's like, know enough and then trust yourself. It's the best you can do. And so yesterday when we started our first StarCraft game, which we didn't stream, it was a game with no purpose. Like, we had one AI that was somewhere on the map, and there was 3 of us kicking around, and the entire point was just to have a low stakes environment where you could just fuck around. You could just play around, figure out the controls, and as you did, all of a sudden you're like, oh, so I can put these anywhere? And like, yeah, well, anywhere you want to. And it's like, oh, what does this do? And you start getting familiar with the environment. But that was it. We played one game like that. And then after that, it's like, all right, let's jump in. Because now it's like you've had enough time to get familiar with the environment. You don't need to know everything. You've just gotten a bit more familiar with the environment. Now you just adapt as you go. And that's life in a nutshell. But there are people who will not play a game unless they've read the whole fucking manual. Secrets, guides, walkthroughs, the whole thing. It's like, well, why? What's the purpose of even playing if you need to know everything? It's not playing, that's a job. Like, that sounds exhausting, right? And that's kind of the whole point, is preparation has its place, but it can go to a point where it's actually taking away from your performance. Because then when all of a sudden you're in the middle of what's happening and you panic and you don't have faith in yourself, and you try reaching back for something you memorized, or reaching back for something that was pre-scripted or pre-prepared, then you find it totally doesn't meet the moment that you're in. It totally doesn't align with anything that's happening, because you're not actually in that moment. You're reaching back to the past. You're reaching for your preparation instead of just having faith in yourself and dancing. Right? Like, this is something that we've talked about previously, but this is one of my favorite examples of this. You get ready to go to, let's say you have a presentation, and you go up and you do your presentation, or you go up and you're starting to do your presentation, all of a sudden you draw a blank. Oh God, what do I say? That. Wow, I just totally drew a blank. Suddenly there's a collective kind of like giggle or a collective like sigh, like, yeah, we've been there. Blank's gone. Right? Like that's exactly all it takes. It's just the pressures of what's in your way. Like you're putting a wall in front of you with that pressure. Let it go. Right? Just accept it. You can talk about it. There's no shame whatsoever in accepting that you're seeing a wall. We've all seen that wall. We're all intimately aware of that fucking wall. Like it's the same goddamn wall too. Somebody at the Netherlands retreat. It's funny we were talking about the wall, and he's like, "Yeah, but is your wall the same as my wall? Are we talking about the same wall?" It's like, yeah, it's not actually a wall. Like it's not a literal wall, but we're all talking about the same thing for sure. You know, it's just recognizing that, and knowing that we're in that together. And that's when you start to bring down your walls. That's when you start to bring down your defenses, your need to get somewhere, right? It's just because you recognize, like, oh, fuck, we're all just here making this hard on ourselves.
Oh my gosh. And even just that, dude, like presentation, draw a blank. You're like, ah, man, whew, just drew a blank. Huh. Where was I going with that? Like it just doing that, like I'm way more comfortable with doing that, but like it's not to say that it necessarily even just being able to do that came easily. Like you have to be taking yourself pretty goddamn seriously to have that happen and not be able to be like, huh, and just express whatever's there. Like just express whatever is there. And this is like, I don't know, like in a lot of ways, kind of blowing my mind. Like, is that actually something you can do? Can you actually just all those things that you assume, couldn't happen? Is there happening? Can you just be like, oh wow, yeah, this is happening. Like, oh, that's happening.
I got an example. This is one of my favorite things to do, and it's one of the most common fears that I get from people in life coaching, especially if they're going out on a date or they're trying to make friends. It's like, well, what do I do if there's an awkward silence? It's like, well, you could recognize that it's not awkward. You are. Like the silence isn't awkward. The silence is just fine. You think it shouldn't be silent, right? And so one of my favorite things to do is look at the other person and go, "This is kind of an awkward silence, isn't it?" And just laugh about it. And it's just because they're going through the same shit more often than not, or they're going to be like, "No, I'm all right. Yeah, no need." And in which case you're like, "Oh, okay, perfect. I didn't need to fill that blank whatsoever," right? But the whole point is just to open up. Like, why not address it? Why not address it? Why do you assume you're the only one feeling it? Why do you assume you're the only one aware of it? And often it's because we have this impression like what's going on inside my consciousness, inside my head. It's inside my head. There's like barriers. Nobody can see what I'm thinking. You wear it like a fucking badge. Like you may not be aware of it, but that doesn't mean it's not happening. Right? Like you could be walking with somebody, if something's on your mind, they feel it. They may not even be aware of what they're feeling, of course, because they're going to translate it as their own awkwardness. Oh God, maybe they're judging me or something. But the point is that there's a feeling there. There's an awareness there. And it's just allowing ourselves to be in that awareness together. But that means allowing ourselves to be vulnerable together, which means taking down this idea of myself that if I'm vulnerable or not perfect or not doing things right or not knowing what to do, that somehow I'm less.
Oh my gosh, man. This has felt like a fucking deep breath, exhale in a lot of ways. Cause like in all those situations, like all of these fears and concerns of like things happening or living up to a certain thing, like why? 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 I don't have an answer. I don't know
There's just
why.
one, man. The alternative is just being. And like I've said to you many times, the fiction in your head is a comfort and an addiction. We keep looking at it as a problem, but it's something that we willingly reach for.
Oh man, that It's not even, it's something that you dive back into, that I dive back into when I'm feeling uncomfortable to feel better. And just like the way, like, because it's not, it's like I'm used to doing it, and like doesn't quite have the same shine that you got a little bit used to for a bit. It was like it was a little more comfortable going back to it. Not gonna lie, and like that one ain't there no more. And so it's like, yeah, here it isn't the same sort of facade that I was able to somehow maintain without even realizing the degree to which I was for a while. And and that's funny in a sense, and also sickening, but funny because I'm gonna choose it to be funny right now, so I at least don't fucking make this moment into something a bag of shit. But just, and it's all like this sort of fucking self-psych, because as soon as it's not so much about you, you see more of what's going on. You see that, like, in a situation with a group of people, like, if you're not making it about yourself, like, you start to see, oh, there's lots of things, and you become more of a tool for yourself to, like, you've done it what seems like all the retreats. It's just be goofy and not take yourself seriously, because that lightens everything. It's like someone takes themselves seriously doesn't lighten anything. It makes it heavier. It makes
That is
everything.
why, just want to burst that bubble. That is why a couple of retreats you've seen me all of a sudden go, I need to take a walk, and I'll just disappear on my own. And it's because I've started thinking about myself. And so for me, the practice is to take that walk and be in reality, like to actually recognize the difference between the narration and the bird that's actually walking across the path in front of me. Because that shit's happening, whereas the narration is just an addiction, right? And so it's nice to be able to get that space and just come back to it. That's why I've said a few times at the retreats, like, I just need to go listen to the wind. That wasn't a metaphor.
That makes sense. Yeah, because like man, how much like in a moment where you're caught up in stuff, assuming certain things, playing into certain things, and then you like snap back into stuff, and how much like snapping back and being a little bit relaxed is so informative, and like you get a sense for like, oh yeah, there's, because there isn't, you don't have to grab for something so much to try and feel better in that spot anymore. And so you're just left with yourself and things to do. And you're like, yeah, I'm gonna do that right now. That makes sense. And then that, when it isn't self-involved, informs the rest of your life in a lot of ways. But when it's like feeling a certain way, a cessation, and then it is about you, it is something about you, then that informs the next thing that you do and you go through. And so, yeah, it's like, would you rather reign in hell or serve in heaven?
That's it. And this is the point. Like, you'll notice when I said I go for a walk and I listen to the wind, or I pay attention to the bird. Those are all things that are regardless of what I think of them. That's a nice thing. I'm not trying to stop thought. I'm just recognizing that it's not reality, because that's the temptation, is to start thinking about your thoughts, trying to resolve the problem that they're creating that doesn't exist in reality. Just exists in your thoughts. Right? Especially if it's something that you're threatened by, something that you're feeling intimidated by, you're frustrated by, you expectations about, blah, 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 blah. All of those problems don't exist except to you in your thoughts if you take them seriously. Whereas you could let them go simply by recognizing you don't have to make those real. You don't actually have to cater to that thought whatsoever. You don't have to participate in that fiction. You don't have to believe in it. You don't have to attach to it. You just don't have to. That doesn't stop the thoughts from happening. Your brain's got to do what brains do. It means that you stop taking every thought personally. And it's really important to recognize how important that is, because the thought, I'm not doing enough, does not have to cripple you, and won't if you don't take it seriously. It's the only difference. It's not about not making making it so that thought never pops up. It's just about knowing that when it does, it's just a thought. It's just a perspective that requires a certain fiction of you that is not the entirety of what you are. Listen to the wind. Pay attention to the ground beneath your feet. Feel the skin on your hands. Come back to what remains, regardless of what you think of it.
And yeah, well said. Because there's such a feeling of like trying to, again, it's like, no, you don't have to. You don't have to. You still don't have to. You still don't have to. Over and over and over. And then it becomes its own sort of like not habit, but just like way of living, like not making it so much about you. And the thought of like even just being alone, like entirely alone, and say on just imagery wise on an island, and like how you would live and what you would do and what you would learn. And part of me, like, well, first of all, it would be survive. It would be figure that out, and that becomes its own sort of informative process. And then it's like, as you're doing it, you can laugh or you can frown and get frustrated. And then that turns into life. It stems from that, instead of like all these assumptions and then trying to like piece them together. Like sometimes coming back to baseline of like, what am I doing here? Like, what are we doing here? Like, what is this all about? Is it about trying to get somewhere? Is it about constantly trying to get to a point that you never get to? Or is it about living and what you're left with when you're left with yourself that doesn't necessarily mean anything about you, what you do? Because they go hand in hand. He who blames others has a long way to go on his journey. He who blames himself is halfway there. He who blames no one has arrived. That's a beautiful little quote there, and I know we're at time, so I'll stop talking now.
Indeed, that's great. This has been a fun episode. I've been really enjoying this conversation because it's been deep, and we've kind of went back and forth. I'm just going to tie this up with, sometimes there is no way to tie it up. Sometimes the only resolution is that there is no resolution and that life continues. How much of a resolution do you need for your own reasons, as opposed to how much of a resolution is actually needed? It's always important to consider that. But we're going to stop this here. We're going to continue on Patreon in 15 minutes. It's a tier 1 call today. All tiers, calling all tiers. So if you can join us, we'd love to see you. Aside from that, we will see you tomorrow for the roundtable episode. Do join that. Tier 2 and tier 3 Patreon supporters can join us on the roundtable. We've also got some new stuff coming up for Patreon. I'm going to chat with Andrew about that shortly after this. We'll talk to you soon.